So, as we know, an increasing number of organizations now understand and appreciate design, user experience, even research, and they really try to do their best. That said, there are a lot more organizations that have no idea what is it that we do, why we do it, and why it matters for them. And to understand the organization that maybe you deal with, you work at, I tried to think of a model of user experience research maturity. And I want to share this model with you. So let's look at it this way. Everybody know the line that comes with that? So let's see what it means in our context. So this is the model. So it looks at maturity with two aspects. Is there buy-in for UX research? It's all online. You don't need to. It's all online. You can access it right now. Go to the book's website. It's all the pictures are there. So is there buy-in for research? And are there any UX researchers in the company? So as you can see, we have 4 situations. And the question is whether you should fight or flight. So let's try and answer that. So let's start from the easy organization. A mature organization. Yes, you have buy-in, and yes, you have UX researchers. Everything is working smoothly. Research is being done and appreciated. The company states that UX research is important, that design is important, and it acts upon research findings. How many people here work for such an organization? 0. Okay. Fight or flight? I'd say neither, because if you found this organization, stay there. The second organization, let's talk about the one that approaches maturity. So why it approaches maturity? Because yes, they have buy-in. They believe in that. They say that they want to do that more, but they don't have any researchers. So they might be, hiring an external consultant for an ad hoc project, or they're about to, establish their first UX group or UX research practice or something like that. Should you fight or flight if you're there? I would say neither. You should probably try and be that first person that joins this company, or transfer to that position if you do research as a part of another job that you have. But still, nothing to fight or flee about. So let's move on to the more interesting organizations. So approaching immaturity. This is probably the hardest organization that we work for or with. Because they don't have buy-in. They don't believe in research. They don't act upon research. But they have people that do that. That's how many people work for these organizations? 3 that admit it. Okay. So it's very frustrating for us to work for organizations that on one hand you can clearly see that they don't believe in research. They don't do anything about it. They don't care about what you bring to the table. And in the same time, they have headcount for UX researchers. Fight or flight?
Fight.
Fight. Of course. But I would say fight to a limit, then flee.
Fire the staff.
I mean, you're there, we're all there to make a change, right? And if that change is not happening, I would say, well, let's make a change somewhere else. And the last organization is I have I think the best way to describe it is probably this. They probably, I mean, maybe they'll change someday, maybe not. Fight or flight doesn't matter. You're not there. You probably don't work there. You probably never will. So these are the four quadrants of UX research maturity. And I know that life is not as simple as four quadrants. I guess there are more types. But this is a good way to see the differences between different organizations and their maturity. All right. Number 2. So let's do it this way. The second thing I want to talk to you about, or second insight, is about the questions you need to ask before you start a research project. And these are questions, some of them are very obvious, so I'll show you them, but 2 are very interesting and not very trivial. So, and I'm saying, I'm showing you this and quoting this thing because you only have one chance to be right. And that's in the beginning of the study where when you set expectations about what's going to happen. And a lot of projects that are not successful, user experience research projects, I mean, they're not successful because people don't do anything about the results because they expected something else. Maybe they expected different participants, maybe they expected a different focus, maybe they expected a different methodology, maybe they expected different results, I don't know. But you only have one chance to start a project right. So let's talk about these questions. Oh, and what happens, what happens is, if you don't do that, is what somebody called achieving failure. You're going to have a wonderful research project that nobody cares about. All right? So remember that, achieving failure. Okay, so these are probably the 4 very obvious questions that you need to ask before you start a project. And these are questions that you ask your UX research stakeholders. These could be, I'm in-house, so I'm going to speak in-house. Your product manager, your engineering lead, maybe a marketing person. These are the people that need to provide answers. You all need to agree on the answers to those 4 questions. The 2 less obvious questions are these. First one, what will you do with the research results? In other words, what I'm actually telling them is, I might not work with you if you're not very eager to do something about the results of this study that we're talking about. And I'm almost never afraid to ask that, and I have a very good reason to do that. In all of the companies that I work for, including the one I work for today, we don't have a lot of researchers. We don't have a lot of time, and usually people do a lot more than what we can research. So it's really important to focus on the right research. And if people are not willing to do something about the results, even before they know what they are, I think it's a waste of time, of our time, and we can do better things. And I try to poke them with this question. And I usually get 2 answers, or one of these 2 answers. The first one is followed by a facial expression like this. Why are you asking? Of course we'll do something about it. Why do you think we asked for this study? So I take that with a grain of salt. They can still ignore you. It's not a red flag, but it's not necessarily a green flag. So it satisfies me for the time being. The more interesting answer is this. How can we know if we're going to do something about the results without knowing what the results are? We'll see. it depends. I don't know. It's too early. What do you think, red flag or green flag? Definitely not green, right? But not necessarily red, though, because what you should do then is tell them, okay, so I might not work on this, or something more politically correct. But so they understand that you might not be involved in this. And sometimes it helps and they come back, and sometimes they don't. And then I say to them, well, okay, so if you're not fully invested, maybe I will not be fully invested. So I will do this study, but I will only provide you with findings. I will not give you recommendations. You yourself, you decide what needs to be done. I will just, put a mirror in front of your face and you do whatever you want to do with it. So I'm not politically involved in the results of this. If this is the way you want to work, fine. Again, it almost never happened. They come back and say, okay, we'll behave. So that's the fifth question you're going to ask. The sixth and last question, what I call the bonus question, is this: what do you know now? So it happens usually with studies that are more generative, exploratory, discovery, research. So when you're trying to look for user needs and wants and who are the users and what they care about, things like that, not traditional lab studies. So what happens is if you do things right and involve your stakeholders, they internalize the findings so well that they think by the end of the study that they knew all that the study hadn't uncovered anything. We knew that, and they did it. So how do you overcome this? It sounds stupid, and you'll understand why this picture is here in a second, but the way to do that is this. When you start your project, you have goals or research questions, the reasons you do this study, the questions that are open, the knowledge gap that exists that you're trying to fill. Ask your stakeholders those questions. You want to know who users are? Okay, who do you think users are? What do you know now? And document that. And then, when they tell you in 6 months that we knew all that, we knew who our users are, you're going to do something like that. And you say, well, on March, so you're not a divorce lawyer. This is a perfect picture for that. You're not a divorce lawyer. I don't want you to behave like divorce lawyers, but make them realize very gently that they did not know that. And here's what you said about what your user or whatever the question was. Yeah. So this is the sixth question. 3. Let's jump into that. So I talked about change a few minutes ago. How do you know you make a difference? How do you know that your research is working? How do you know that your stakeholders are bought into it, that they're engaged? So your first talk was, about that. I tried to find signs. It's nothing quantitative, it's all qualitative. I can't say that if the CEO says that user experience research is great 3 times a quarter is not good, and when he says that 5 times a quarter it's good. I can't say that. But I can talk about a few signs. So the first sign is, I call it research is consumed. So people they fix problems, they act upon what you find, what you recommend. They do stuff because of what they learned in research. Well, I can't add anything to that. If they pay more to do research, they allocate budget to that, it's a very good sign. Findings are long and lasting. When people talk about your research and use your research results for years after you've completed it, that's an excellent sign that research is working. Sometimes you don't always see that people do something about it. That's okay. Not in every case that they don't listen to you, it's a bad thing. Sometimes it takes them 2 years to digest something, and then they'll act upon it. So try and think about studies that will generate long and lasting results. Again, you talked about trust. So when they invite you, when you get a seat at the table, when they invite you to discussions of, when important decisions are being made, when teams ask to work with you, when clients come back to you, obviously that's a very good sign. That's a favorite. When skeptical stakeholders become believers, when the spark in their eyes is lit, that's an excellent sign. When the business has changed, not happening a lot, but sometimes companies decide to develop new products because of research. Sometimes they decide to change roadmaps of products, and these are, if it happens because of research results, these are excellent signs. Staffing has changed. All right, so 3 or 30 or 500 people are not going to do what they do. They're going to work on something that was concluded in research. So when people are allocated to fix problems or to develop things based on research, it's also a good sign. That's an interesting one. When teams, I see that from time to time, people are not stupid. They see that you don't have time to do a lot of research. And they say, okay, can you teach us a few things and train us so we can do some of it on our own? And if that happens a lot, you should actually do something about it. I have a lot of arguments about that with some colleagues. If we let them do our job, then what will they think about us? They will not need us anymore. And it's true for certain things, but it's not true for a basic usability study. Anyone can do that. Why wouldn't they do that? I've had enough of doing that. So they can definitely learn from that. They want to learn how to do usability testing. They want to learn how to interview people. They want to learn how to interpret research results. You can teach them all that. It's not that hard. You can train them. And that's very good that this is happening, that you get these repeated requests. And last thing is that researchers are recognized. These emails, we launched this, thank you for everybody in the team who did that. The product managers and their names, their engineers, if you're not there, it's not a good sign. If you're there, they thought about you. A small thing that matters, that if they think about you when they write these emails, that's an excellent sign. That's it. This is my book. This is my book. And this is the book. The book has its own personality, so its own Twitter account and website. And I find myself tweet at 5 a.m. It's 5 a.m. Copy editing and proofreading again. Hashtag living the dream. And then tweet as my book, Muha. And that's the story of my life in the last year or so. Questions?
Can you give us, you mentioned in the beginning the list of questions that you should have. One of them was, what do you want to know and why? Can you give us examples of what they respond with? Are they like, should we launch product A or product B? Are they more like, what kind of product should we start to think about?
Another sign of buy-in and engagement is the questions. Oh, sorry. The question is, can you give some examples about the responses to the question, what do you want to know and why, right? Okay. So a very good sign for engagement and buy-in for research is the kind of questions that people ask you to answer. And how many times can you study whether blue underlined links are working or not? And compare that with, we want to launch this product in a country that we're not familiar with. Help us understand, what do people in this country need when we talk about this domain? That's a more interesting question. I wouldn't expect people to ask me that question, but sometimes they do. And it makes me happy. I mean, that's what I see myself as, a person that's doing that rather than testing underlying blue links. So this is one example. Other questions, other requests that I get. Sometimes I get requests that are not right. So they're not asking the right question, or they're not asking the more important question, in my view. So this encourages me to try and negotiate a new, I call them research questions, a new research question that they should ask. And it's always a negotiation process, and I'm trying to think, I'm spending some time trying to think of more examples for your question. Sometimes it's what we talked about just now and during the break. What loads the brains of users, this product or this product, or things like that. Yes?
We have a remote question.
Mm-hmm.
How would you recommend that we deal with people who are too focused on time to market for a product and are not giving enough space to do research in the foreseeable future?
How do you deal with people that are more focused with time to market rather than
And giving space to do that
giving,
research.
cutting some slack? So a lot of people in the UX world and in research try to find these punchlines and one-liners that you can say to them when you want to launch something crappy now, or things like that. I'm not all for that. Punchlines won't do the trick. You're just going to fight even more. I'm all for showing them the benefits. So I would say deal with that for a while. Accept the fact that time to market is what's going to lead what you do for a while. But try and involve them more in the research process. Have them watch users as much as possible. Try and put them in a situation where they feel what users feel. If you need to deal with a crazy device, ask them to use it. If you need to deal with a complicated panel for a washing machine, have them work with that. Then they can understand, they can try and develop some empathy toward users and understand that time to market is not, sometimes, not always, is not the most important thing. More. Yeah.
To follow up on that, how do you get them, the stakeholder, to understand that you need to take the time to do the research when in their mind the biggest issue or the biggest question is the market before the competitor?
So whenever I join a new company or a new team, I'm burning myself here. I'm pretty much doing the same thing. I'm investing a lot of research time in doing what they want, no matter what they want, what they think is right. In most cases, they get a lot of benefit from that. They begin to trust me, and then I propose different things. Propose maybe the right things, maybe other things that are important or should be important, and then they start getting closer. This is what I do. It works for me, at least. Are we on the time?
A few more coming in remote.
Okay.
That's okay. The first is, as an outsider, even as an internal researcher, how do you suggest we stay involved with different teams of developers and designers and make our work visible to others in the organization?
They're asking about external?
This person is an internal researcher,
Okay.
but is considering himself an outsider to this process. And is asking how do they make their work visible to others?
How do you make your work visible to others? So invite everybody. I prefer this meeting when I ask all these questions, I prefer that this is a meeting that involves as many people as possible rather than just 2 or 3. If that person is referring to the products, the outcome, the deliverables of research, the last thing I would recommend is writing a report. Reports are, nobody comes to work saying, I'm going to read a report today. Although this is what they do. I prefer more experiential reports, rich reporting. One thing that I started, and we do that from time to time, we call it an expo. We close a room for a day, and we present findings there. It could be posters, it could be video stations, it could be artifacts that we collected. We, the team, are there to answer people's questions. We find that, Google is big, but we find that these expos attract hundreds of people. And with a report, I'm thankful if 3 people read the report, including myself. So this is a very good way to involve people and make the research visible. People talk about that, and they talk about the findings, even after that event. Yes. All right? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's super.
So now